to have Claude and Amy come back and run that session. So Amy and Claude, I will give it back to you. Thank you.
Ander. So welcome back to the Perfect Science Career Coaching Series. And for those of you who have missed Module 1, we're just going to really quickly introduce ourselves again. My name is Amy Chung. I'm currently the Director of Medical Writing and Transparency at Jazz Pharmaceuticals. I have a PhD in PharmSci from the UW-Madison. And my previous roles have included roles at Amgen, Bristol Myers Squibb, Neostem, and Edwards Life Sciences. With that, I'll hand it over to Quad to introduce himself as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Quad. I'm Quadro Wisofori. So I run a coffee company right now where we make K-cups that have vitamins in there for mental health and wellness. I have a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences from UW-Madison, and I'm currently a coach for the National Science Foundation's I-Corps program as well.
Okay, great. So just to recap, in the first session where we coached folks through and kicked off this career transition series, we identified our 3P code, which is basically your personality, position, and your place. And so it was really just getting to know your background and yourself as a person, because that's half of the game when you're applying for jobs. So your personality and yourself is half, your background is half. So they're equally important. So in the first session, we got to learn all about kind of yourself and what makes you tick. And we reviewed a job list that was tailored for your personality, place, and position. And then we explored job title openings in that session, and then kind of touched on exploring your connections and targeted networking from there. So in this session, we're going to deep dive into revising your job application materials. And then we'll touch on some interviewing tips and how to navigate the questions and kind of the forum and the platform there. And then we'll also teach you kind of how to maximize your offer once you get the negotiation setting. So again, from the last session, we really focused on getting a clear idea of who you are as a person. And we reviewed a tailored job list to evaluate yourself and your background. In this session, we're going to switch gears and focus on your background and your skills, and then kind of dovetail the two together to have a practical and strategic approach to the job application process. So again, this is kind of a 3,000 foot level of the career transition series. We've finished module 1. In the module 2, you got hopefully a good perspective on hiring top talent from a recruiter's perspective. And then for this module, we're going to be deep diving into your job application materials so that you can be the most competitive candidate out there for the job you want. I just want to take a quick pulse, like we did last time. I want to get an idea of what fields of study you're currently in, and just getting an idea of people's backgrounds. If you can put it into the chat, what your current field of study is.
I can read them for you. Biomechanics, human movement, development of tendons, biochemistry, microbiology, computational neuroscience, Alzheimer's, atmospheric chemistry, biomed engineering, immunotherapy, dev and cell bio, neurodegeneration, cognitive neuroscience, a lot of neurochemistry, skin inflammation, earth system science, and vaccine development, immunology.
Oh, great. Very diverse. Yeah. Biomed engineering. Yeah, I have some background in that. I postdoced in a bioengineering group at UCLA. Immunology, neurospace. Yeah, there's a really wide range of folks. It's good to see. Okay. Fluorescence microscopy. It's always fun. Okay. Okay. So we'll be able to kind of touch on some of these areas. And again, we're going to show you how to tailor and strategically modify your job application materials. So there will be lessons for everybody with all the diverse backgrounds here. So great. So let me move on to really jumping into kind of the major points for the application materials and its processes. So I'll let Quad take you through kind of the lessons here.
Hi, everyone. So when we were going through and putting together this workshop and then these books and everything, we noticed that, especially from experience in industry, that there are a lot of intangibles that we didn't have when we were first coming out of school. And so one of the key things that came up in our discussions about all of this was the concept of hiring seasons, where there are particular cadences to companies and when they hire, depending on their agency and their place. And we talked about place codes before. And so typically budgets come out in October, and then people get the okays to be able to hire for the new positions or replace old positions between February and September. So that definitely leaves the time for you to be able to say, look, this is what I need to time my applications in order to get in. We are in that hiring season right now. So this is a good time to start putting in applications, particularly in the beginning of the hiring seasons. One key thing we want to let you know is that there are application limits for some companies. Some may not allow you to put in applications for 2 jobs at the same time, and other ones can go as strict to say that you can't put in an application for more than 1 job per year. So be mindful of those and pay attention to those while you are applying for jobs, so that way you don't kind of frivolously throw away an application opportunity for a company that you want to go with. We can go with the next slide. All right, so the key thing that we want to talk about with resumes is we have to make it work well for the hiring manager or the person that's reading it. A lot of times when we're coming out of deep research, doing deep dives into our projects, we come up with a lot of acronyms and jargon and things that aren't necessarily known to the general public. And so with that, we have to be able to, as scientists, as engineers, and people in STEM, translate our experiences, translate our knowledge and our skill sets into a terminology that can be understood by a lot of different people. So what we've done is that we've broken that down into 3 different types of things to consider. You have to consider your energy, you have to consider your story, and then you have to consider your audience. And so the first thing with the energy is that during your hiring, during your job search, you can have different types of energy. Some days you can be upset and frustrated. Other days you can be happy and hopeful. You want to make sure that those days that you're upset and frustrated, to make sure that doesn't show in your writing when it comes to resumes, because of your audience. We want your audience to make sure that they have someone who's helpful and have someone who's excited about joining their company. And one of the big things that the audience, which are the hiring managers, are very concerned about is hiring a bad candidate. So they're more concerned with hiring a bad candidate than they are with hiring a good one, because it's so hard to get rid of people if you make that mistake. So with that, it's more about, I would say, for the scientists in the room and everybody in the room, we don't want to trigger anything in their brain to say, okay, this might be a bad hire. That's more important than trying to let them know how much you know about your particular field. And so we want to make sure that with any story, you start with the beginning, a middle, and an end, and don't just list out your jobs or the techniques that you've learned. Make sure that you have some type of life story that they can say, oh, we are a part of their life story in this way. Next slide. Right. So we have an example, which is a really common example from marketing. And it goes like this when it comes to storytelling. The story, the old adage goes like this, where there's a homeless man who was falling asleep in his car while he was smoking a cigarette. And then all of a sudden he wakes up and all of his stuff is on fire and he just barely gets out of his car to escape. And the car happened to be parked between 2 different newspapers, newspaper north and newspaper south. And then we can go to the next slide. So the first newspaper says, car burst into flames near a local newspaper office. Next slide. And the next newspaper south says, man loses everything in local fire. And so just from that framing of this story and being able to put in that type of life experience that you can resonate with, that makes a big deal when it comes to when you're writing. You want to make sure you want to write the story that people want to read, and you want to write the story that tells the most about you. Next slide. So what we've done is that we've looked at a lot of different resumes and CVs, and we look to see design wise, writing wise, which one of these told the best stories. Dr. Chung has done a lot of hiring in her careers in industry, and I've done a lot of hiring in my careers in public service. And so with that, we're able to see a lot of different resumes and be able to see which ones come out. And so this has ended up being a pretty good template of the ones that we saw that come out. We have at the top your name, and then on the left, we have you being able to list out things like your contact, your education, your skills, and your memberships. And so when you look at the design of it, when you start from your name and then go to your summary and experiences, professional development, and publications, that tells a story. On the left is more information that's the listing part of a resume, and on the right is telling a story. So today we want to focus on the summary part of the story, and then how to write an experience part of the story. Next slide. Yep. And so this is the real life version of the resumes that we thought looked good. So we just wanted to put that here and be able to show you that we're going to start off with the summary, and that this is what it's going to look like when it comes to your Word document or your PDF. So next slide. All right, so we have some summary statements here that we've taken from different resumes that we've seen throughout the time that we've been looking at resumes. And we wanted to show you some good examples of summary statements and some bad examples of summary statements, so that you'll know how to maneuver and how to write, just to kind of get more shots at goal. So this is an example of a good summary statement. We found that there are pretty much two that we thought were good, which would be the professional and direct way, or the more light and charming way. So we're going to show you both, so that way, depending on your personality or your 3P code, you'll be able to write a summary statement that fits in with your personality and shows your personality. So this one, professional and direct, pharmacologist, experienced in executing high quality scientific publications, supporting preclinical, clinical, and post-marketing studies, who is interested in taking on new challenges, works well individually and as a part of a cross-functional team, strong scientific communication skills, and demonstrated leadership in training and supporting a team of writers. So it's hitting all those points about being in a teamwork, knowing how to publish, and knowing how to support any type of clinical development at each phase. Next slide. The next one is a little more fun, but it's still professional. And we really liked this one when we were putting it together. Tenacious sleep nerd with over 5 years of collaborative clinical research experience, PhD in neuroscience from UC Irvine, thrives on collaboration with diverse stakeholders. Experiences include 7 clinical research studies, 5 scientific publications, and over 10 presentations. Currently leading real-world evidence research focused on helping people achieve an amazing night's sleep. So we say fun here because this really brings out passion. So for the people who's had 3P codes, had to do with more about self-expression, I'm thinking about the pioneers that are in the audience. This would be a great one to use if you're a professional and fun pioneer. And the professional and direct one could be something they would use if you're, say, like a soldier or an investigator. And it could just be something that will show your personality. Next slide. And so this is actually a bad summary statement. We have here that it's sloppy and generic. And so with this, we have the summary statement as a data analyst, I'm used to analyzing data, talking to experts to gather information, translating heavy concepts into succinct and straightforward language. I could tailor my writing to different audiences and have an idea for detail and a respect for deadlines, however tight they are. So it's very boring. It's very matter of fact and everything like that. And it doesn't necessarily say anything about the person in general. We can go to the next slide. And so then we have another bad example, which is sloppy and lengthy. where we have here the person is saying pharmaceutical industry professional with long background in research, regulatory affairs, medical communications. They end up going on and on about different disease states that they've worked on and different parts of the development process that they've been in, to the point where it just all becomes some type of medical jargon. And it becomes something that the audience who may not be in medicine or may not be in pharmacy may not be used to reading. And so it kind of gums them up and then makes them think about the next resume that could be easier to read. Next slide. And so here what we've done is that we created a small little template which you can use according to the job title that you want to go ahead and apply for, because with resumes, you want to make sure that you tailor each resume to the job title that you're going after, so that way the person or the hiring manager knows that you're serious about the position. So with this, we put together a simple template where you could take little pieces of the job description and turn them into a summary statement that will be able to get through a lot of the different computer programs that are hiring managers use to sift through different clients or candidates, and then B, to actually raise the hiring manager's attention. One key thing that when we talked about was that hiring managers take a lot of time and consideration into crafting the job descriptions that they put together. They choose their words carefully. They choose the different task and skill sets that they're looking for very carefully. So instead of having them interpret what you think that matches up with any of the different job titles or job details, just actually copy and paste it right back into it. So that way they know what they're talking about, and then you're able to have an idea of what they're talking about. So with here, we have an adjective that you're going to pull out of the job title description. Job title, excited to join a company space. So that could be whether it's going to be an aerospace company, an electric car company, an oil company, whichever the case may be, organization that focuses on, and then you'll pick the 3 job title details that you feel like you can really stand on. So next slide. Are there any questions so far before we start going into tailoring any of the summary statements? Let me look in the chat and see if there's anything around.
Yeah, there is one question related to AI software. Yeah, please go ahead.
So let's see, what is your take on the shift towards AI to screen resumes? Does this still apply to that? And do we need 2 resumes? I'll answer, and then I'll also let Amy see if she has anything to say as well. They are using AI software mainly to look for the keywords. So it's almost like if you're looking at search engine optimization, you want to make sure that you can get through that. So we don't know if some companies are doing it or some companies aren't, but we want to make sure regardless of the case, your resume can get past that AI software. And then we definitely, I would say, recommend making sure that you put out multiple resumes when you're doing things. Amy, do you want to chime in on anything or?
Absolutely agree. If you use the right keywords from the job postings, you'll get past the algorithm real quick. And, you know, from a personal experience, I know they're leveraging AI technology, but not completely. I know they're still manually, for the most part, going through and reviewing firsthand because, you know, the technology is fairly new, so they're not completely reliant on it. So it does, for the most part, from my experience, the candidates that apply get a human set of eyes on their resume still.
Okay. That's awesome. Does that answer? Hopefully that answers the question well. Good. So this is working out well. So what we've done here is that we've taken this is a posting on LinkedIn for a job here. And Syneos, I believe, is a contract research organization. And we just decided to say, okay, let's take this job posting to see how we could create a summary statement for a resume. So in the blue dots that you see there are the different parts that we have from that template. The top part, principal research scientist, is going to be the job title. Syneos Health is going to be a contract research organization. We found here in the job title, under job responsibilities, the word independent seemed to be really big around here. So we want to pull that out as an adjective. And then we see for the rest of the bullet points that they mostly talk about bioanalytical techniques, bioanalytical data, bioanalytical methods. And it seems pretty generic when it comes to those type of different things. So next slide. So what we've done is we turned that into this template where an independent principal research scientist excited to join a contract research organization that focuses on bioanalytical techniques, methods, and data. So something as simple as that allows you to get through any of the algorithm software, allows the hiring manager to know what you're talking about because they wrote those words, bioanalytical techniques. What bioanalytical techniques means to you or I or Dr. Chung or anybody else could be anything. This is what they wrote. Where I think that a lot of people would say I could show my bioanalytical techniques by talking about specific ELISAs or talking about specific experimentations that I've done. And then you start to bring in the protein names, you start to bring in a lot of the different pathways or anything that you're working on, and that gets jumbled up. So if they just said bioanalytical techniques, methods, and data, then you just repeat that to get through. Next slide.
Add to that is,
Oh, yeah.
in the job experiences section is where you can really get into the specifics of the bioanalytical data. So in the summary statement, just to kind of reframe or add more context to, the section that we're focused on right now, you really it's like your mission statement. It's your first impression. It's really your first foot forward. And so you can definitely keep it high level, like Kwadwo said, you can keep it bioanalytical techniques and then get into the weeds in that a little bit under the job description section.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm.
Cool. So
Okay.
yeah, wanted to dive into a hands-on writing session and yeah, take it away. Cool.
Yeah, so I think Dr. Singh has sent out an email asking for folks to bring their draft resume. And so as Kwadwo mentioned, the meat of the resume is your summary statement and your job description. Everything else can be pretty, populated pretty straightforwardly. And you can do that offline, in your own time. But for this session, we're going to be focusing on just a summary statement and the job description part. Because again, that's really kind of where the hiring manager's eyes go. So we're going to do two exercises. The first one will be the summary statement. And if folks can volunteer their draft resumes, if they have a summary statement, if you can populate it into the chat, I'll just go in and kind of randomly pick one, and then we can work through one or two together in this session. And then a little bit down the road, we'll do the same thing for the job experiences, the description part. But this first exercise will focus on the summary statement. So any volunteers? Okay. Awesome. So Arul, I hope I'm saying your name right, Arul. I will take your experience first. Okay, so let's go with Arul's summary statement. So let me know if you can see this. And then Arul, if you happen to have a job description that you've searched on LinkedIn and you have a favorite posting or, like a targeted posting that you would like to apply in the future, you can also put that link in the chat, and then we can also kind of put the two together side by side and start to tailor it as well as part of this exercise. I've had a couple of examples here in case there were no volunteers and in case the audience was shy, but let me paste Arul's description here, the summary statement here. Okay. Exceptionally motivated scientist with expertise in project management, experiment design, and team leadership. I think this is a pretty good statement. It's very strong. I can sense the energy. There's enthusiasm there. So that's a great statement. Over 20 years of musculoskeletal research experience with highly cited first author publications. Okay. Demonstrated ability to communicate complex concepts to multidisciplinary staff. Excels in both wet bench and sequencing analyses. Committed to driving innovation and improving patient outcomes through drug development. I think this is a really solid summary statement. Let's see if I can, Let's see if we can beef it up just a little bit more. And I like to kind of put things in buckets of ideas so that the spacing just works out visually better for the hiring manager. And also just we like to group things by idea so that we're not redundant, right? So the first bucket is really your personality, exceptionally motivated scientists with expertise in these skilled areas. Great. And then now you're capturing kind of the length of years of experience with highly cited first author publications, okay? Demonstrated ability to communicate. So it's another kind of skill set that's putting forward, okay. Excels in both wet lab and sequencing analysis, okay. What you can do is kind of put this bucket and that bucket together because it's a little bit more of a personality kind of soft skills idea bucket. So if you wanted to make it a little more succinct and group the first and the third sentence together, and you can kind of make it a little bit tighter to put your first impression forward. I think that the way that Arul finishes with committed to driving innovation and improving patient outcomes through drug development is perfect. I think that really is the beginning and the middle and the end, right? So beginning is kind of the personality and what the dedication is and the energy. The middle part is over 20 years of, that's the middle of where you currently are with your experience. And then the end is you're committed to improving patient lives. If you wanted to go one step further in terms of really putting yourself out there as an available candidate looking for opportunities, you can add a statement like that. Seeking opportunities to improve patient outcomes through drug development. Or instead of seeking, you could use actively pursuing opportunities. Any adjective that will get you there in front of their face to really let them know, hey, I'm open, I'm available, I'm really excited, and really looking for opportunities. So this is fine the way it is as well, but if you have a personality that you want to be more proactive and kind of in the hiring manager's face, you could change it to actively pursuing opportunities to drive innovation and improve patient outcomes, right? And it looks like because it's a drug development, what I recommend candidates do is put the actual field of study here. So drug development, let me see, will I see that you've sent the posting that you are looking for, scientist. Okay, so we can put exactly that. Looking for pursuing scientist opportunities in pursuing scientist opportunities. You can even put research scientist. I mean, when you look for your job postings, use the exact words. So if it's scientist, use scientist, right? You can also go one step further and say, actively pursuing research scientist opportunities in the biotechnology field, right? Or in biotechnology, in the biotechnology industry, if that's where you're going. That way, there's no guesswork. The hiring manager sees this, and they actively think, they're not asking, well, would this person really be interested in joining industry? I mean, do they want to stay in academia? This takes all the guesswork out, and you can say the hiring manager can take a look and think, okay, this person really wants this position. They're willing to really put themselves out there and just really clearly spell out what they want. And so it's kind of a win-win for the candidate and the hiring manager as well. Any questions here so far? As I'm kind of like wordsmithing this live. Alex, I think.
Yeah, I have a quick question about like how long our little summary should be.
2 to 3 sentences ideally. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, you could, it really depends on your personality too. And you know, if you're really short and to the point, that's part of your personality. So it's not a wrong approach. Typically, what we see, the ones that from a hiring manager's perspective catch my eye are really 2 to 3 sentences. Anything beyond, and then also I like the spacing here. Anything beyond 2, 3 sentences that are like stuck together to me goes over a paragraph, and so I start to glaze over. And so 2 to 3 sentences, again, summarizing beginning, middle, and an end. You know, just showing your personality, your energy, showing your key skill sets, and then showing, you know, what you're committed to and what you're looking for. So those 3 are the key points that I would highlight home.
Thanks. I
Yeah.
actually, oh
Oh.
yeah, go ahead, Quada.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was just gonna add also too is that when it comes to resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, all of these things, um, what they always say is that you're not going to win the battle, you're not going to win the war on the first fight or on the first battle. So there's not going to be some point in time where like you write such an amazing resume that it's like we have to hire you right on the spot, right? This is to get to the next step, which is okay, they're interested and they want to bring you in for an interview. So with each particular Lego or in the block, you want to be able to just get to that next goal, go from A to B, B to C, C to D. Instead of saying if I make something so amazing at A, they're going to just jump right over to D. There's a process to all of this.
Thanks. I have one other actually like follow-up question too, because some of this information seems to be similar to what you'd include in the cover letter too. So like, should they be similar or like, should it be like completely different and not redundant?
No, absolutely. I would, what I do is kind of like save buckets of ideas and kind of vetted and polished language for me to recycle here and there. For with cover letters, we will get to it in a little bit, but just for this audience, I really haven't seen cover letters be required in a really long time, like 5+ years. So I don't know that cover letters are required too much anymore in industry. That said, we do have a template. If they do require a cover letter, it's not dissimilar, like you said, Alex. You can kind of take the same things. And you know, the fact that you're committed to improving patient lives, that doesn't change. The fact that you're exceptionally motivated scientist, that doesn't change. And the fact that you have all 20 years of research experience, those core ideas don't change. So you can tweak wording here and there if you're worried about being too redundant, but I think summary statement is maybe like a Cliff Notes version of your cover letter. And even in your cover letter, the summary statement will be kind of only in the middle chunk of it. So we'll kind of, I'll circle back to that point when I review the cover
Okay.
letter template. But definitely you will be recycling your kind of key ideas that you're presenting.
Thanks.
We're all about don't reinvent the wheel, but just make the wheel a little bit, decorate it a little bit different. So is there?
I think Stacy has a question, and then there's 1 or 2 things in the channel. So Stacy, you want to go ahead and ask?
Would you have to change your statement for each application? Because then if you don't, I imagine it'd be way too general for each one.
Yeah, you definitely want to have a tailored version that speaks. You want to mirror the hiring manager's language, as Kwadwo was saying. So for resumes, definitely you should tailor every single one of them, in my opinion, just to go with their organization. And Quad was mentioning earlier about that Syneos Health, that example. A lot of companies will have their like mission statement or forward-looking statements or their company culture statement. So they have mottos for each organization, and that'll always come before the job description and the roles and responsibilities. So they'll always kind of introduce the company and their culture and their beliefs first, and then they'll kind of go deep into what that job entails in that company. So you'll want to take that top part and you'll want to take elements of what the company really believes in. Some companies, it's driving results. Some companies, it's to be the most innovative in the field. Some companies, it's really just the patients, whether there's revenue there or not. So you really just want to get a sense of their culture And other companies, they really wanted to be a fulfilling, holistic, fun workplace, like our company is all about culture, right? And so it really, we look for candidates that really are passionate about patients and really are looking for great culture and to contribute to that. So it's a little bit different lens for each company and each hiring manager in that company. But there's, because the information is so easily and readily available out there, you can either go, if it's not on the LinkedIn post, you can go to the company site and then we'll always have a mission statement. So you can tailor your summary statements and your resume that way that you're submitting to that company. Now, when it comes to LinkedIn profiles per se, it's not, it is ideal to kind of tailor it to that company when you're at the time of the application. But if you're submitting multiple versions of a resume at once, and then you have your LinkedIn profile with a generic summary statement, that's also fine. From a hiring manager's perspective, we don't readily go to LinkedIn. We get talent acquisition bringing resumes to us. So the resume is really the first thing we see. And then once we're kind of aware of the candidate's presence, and the only time that I really go on to LinkedIn is really just to get a Cliff Notes visual summary of their, like a quick note of where their experience is. And also just to kind of get a like first impressions of what their energy is, what they're looking for, and things like that. So I hope that answers your question in a long-winded way.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, I wanted to get to one more sample, but I think we're kind of tight on time, so I think we need to move on. But Andrea, I see you've put it in the chat, your summary statement. Maybe we can address this offline, or
Yeah, you
come
can
back to
share the
this.
Excel. Yeah, you can share the Google Doc with me if you wouldn't mind spending a couple of minutes, and then I'll share it with the class or with Andrea directly. Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's get back to our presentation and truck along. So then we'll move on to the experience part, and then I'll let Quad take over from here.
All right, yeah, so we're moving on to the experience part. I think we had a lot of questions about that before, so we'll start moving through. We'll pick up the pace for the rest of this. Let's see, so the next slide. The key thing about highlighting your experience is what we really want to say that you need to have customized versions for each one of the jobs that you apply for, which is why when you're going through the 3P program and you see the job list, try to pick out just a couple that you want to go through and make sure that you do customized versions for them. We want to mirror the words, just like we always said, to make sure that it gets through any algorithms or just sparks an idea in the hiring manager's head, the person who wrote it, that you are qualified for this position and you'd be great for the team. We also want to reiterate again to avoid the laundry list of different things that you've done throughout your scientific or engineering career. So next slide. So this is a good example of a professional and direct experience. So we have here targeted clinical trials for next generation CAR T therapies. They did regulatory documents. On one line here, we have designed clinical grade SOPs for the next one. And then the last one there is talking about clinical sample collection, so patient response post-treatment. So these three things clearly define what they do, and it tries to keep things clear. So like they would say regulatory documents instead of whatever particular document that they're using. And talk about SOPs and clinical grade for GMP instead of talking about any individual SOP. Next slide. And so this is another one that's professional and fun. Or they talk about the passion that they have for everything. So they drove the clinical research strategy for global medical affairs. And they wanted to prioritize the data gaps. They wanted to design studies. They led multiple high-functioning cross-functional teams. So with this, it's very clear, it's very distinct, and it's in that group of threes, just 1, 2, 3 about what they've done. Next slide. And so with that, we have a bit of a template that we put together as well. a lot of times people will go through and list their accomplishments that they've done for every individual thing. What we want you to do is just kind of put together the big major accomplishment, something you would want to talk about in an interview for the field of study that you're in. And then after that, you would want to list 3 different descriptions that you fit from the job description. And then at the end of all of these, because we're all coming out of academia, it's just presented at major conferences and published peer-reviewed journal articles. Everybody knows what that is. And that's a general statement that allows you to cover all of the things that we do in academia. So we have an example real quick for you. If we go to the next slide, this is someone's experience example that we took from LinkedIn. And we just kind of said, okay, this is how they've organized things. And we could see here already that there's all different types of what we call alphabet soup. So a lot of the audience here would know what, SARS-CoV-2 is, but if you don't, then you start to see that, and then that could kind of distract you if you're a hiring manager. So we don't want the hiring manager to get distracted or start to feel like, they just, it's just distracted for the most part. So we want to clear things like that out and look for key points here, which I kind of put together and try to put it into this global view where you say, this is an accomplishment, this is the field, and then this is these are the skill sets I had from that. So if we go to the next slide here.
Just to add my 2 cents.
Oh,
what
sorry,
I thought
go
was
ahead, please.
unfortunate about this candidate was, it started off strong, right? And you just kind of were lost in the weeds, but the components are there, like in the parentheses, like that's a metric that's measurable, right? They did, create a rapid antigen test, and then it led to a publication and a patent application. So that would have been something I would have emphasized a little bit more. So it's all there. It's just kind of, just lost in the weeds. I'll go to the next slide. That was my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. That's exactly it. And I think, in marketing, we call that, or in journalism, they call it burying the lead. So you don't want to bury the lead. You want to make sure that you put the accomplishment that you have right up front before they start to maybe doze off a bit for the rest of the different parts of your answer. So we changed
so if I could
this.
just revise that real quick. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
So then, like Kwadwo was saying, so if you were to revise it based on that principle, you would say, achieved publication and patent application through, creating a rapid antigen for this, and just make it a lot shorter. But you just lead with the result then. But in any case, you want to just feature your accomplishments, right?
Right. And so if we go to the next slide.
Do you want to go to the next slide after this?
The one that's right after this one. Yep. And so with this, we did the rewrite where we had, we took the main thing here, which is increase the sensitivity of a viral antigen test, right, for point of care machines. They could have even put in there, like Dr. Chung was saying, depending on where they're going to, that it led to a patent or led to a publication. If you're going into academia, here we have it as an industry thing where it led to a point, a better sensitivity for a point of care machine. And then the next sentence there are the different steps that they had just taken from the job description. Produced biochemical assays, SOP compatible with CGMP, which is good manufacturing practices. And they had something there about being active on social media. So at first step or at first glance, you would think, especially after giving, 5-7 years of your life to a cause, to a disease, or to research in a field, that this looks pretty generic. But once again, we always want to say that you're not going to win the whole game. You're not going to win the war on the first page. This resume is really just to entice somebody who's reading this enough to say, we want to talk to this person. So with these, this may look generic to everyone, but it's actually not as generic as it looks, when you get into actual hiring managers. So do you have any comments for any of this? Okay, cool. Next slide. All right.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should, in the interest of time, because we do have to touch on kind of the cover letter interview
Ah,
and
yes.
some other like negotiating tips. I wonder if we can quickly go through those, and then if we have time, come back to the exercise of
I like
writing
that.
this.
Yep.
Yeah, let's do that just so we can get through all the material, and then if folks can stay on, we can do an exercise live.
Mhm.
Okay, so LinkedIn profile. I know there's a lot of questions to to where does LinkedIn come in? Where does the resume come in? There's a lot of overlap, and there are parts where the Venn diagram overlaps, but as I mentioned earlier, LinkedIn can be used, but typically hiring managers don't see LinkedIn until they receive the resume, and then we kind of use it as our cliff notes. And I think Dr. Singh is going to share this recording after this session, so you can kind of reference back and look at the template in more detail. But we have some tips and guidance for you in terms of how your profile should look. So cover letter, again, I haven't really seen it required in years, but if it does, just break it out. We have it broken out for you in these kind of idea blocks. One is the introduction, which is the beginning, highlighting your technical skills, which is kind of the middle, and then really the third bucket is the meat of your cover letter, where you connect the dots for the hiring manager in terms of your bioanalytical skills and how you can help the company move forward with your technical skills and your passion for improving patient lives, and really commitment to results, things like that. So you want to make that connection for them, and then you want to thank them for their time in reviewing your cover letter. Interviewing, again, it's the same thing as LinkedIn, same thing as the resume. It's really the same thing. You're talking to the hiring manager, and so you have to remember your audience. You have to have a flow. I think that's the recurring theme we've been telling you. You want to keep your answers short. So don't go more than 3 minutes. I've definitely experienced where my eyes just start glazing over. Hiring managers are very busy. So they're asking these key questions for you at the interview with intention. So they can get a sense of the response they're looking for within the first minute or two. So I wouldn't go over more than 3 minutes, otherwise you'll start to lose them. So pay attention to your energy, make sure you're putting out, good energy there, and your enthusiasm for a new opportunity. And pay attention to their energy, especially in the beginning of people's careers. They get put on these interview panels, and some of these people, because they're starting out their career and they're brand new and they want to do a perfect job, they get nervous, right? And so you want to kind of, it goes a long way to kind of be chill about things, and be confident, but also be calm as well. Also, their energy, pay attention to that. Interviews go both ways. If you pick up disgruntled vibes and dysfunctional vibes, you definitely want to pay attention to that, and you want to pay attention to the team's energy. So don't reduce your accomplishments to a dry list of jobs and trophies. I think this is like 80% of the time. The most common thing I see over and over is kind of people show up to the interview or through their resumes, they kind of list their accomplishments, very static, like accomplished this, developed this, worked on this, or like that statement, the summary statement. I'm used to analyzing data. Do you want me? It's really just kind of like, not really. If you're not going to be in it, we don't want to invest our time to invest, your growth and potential. So you really want to make the impression that you're somebody who wants to do well and is a good fit for the organization. So you want to express your enthusiasm. You want to connect the dots for them, instead of saying, I developed ELISAs, I worked on ELISAs. You can say, I had a tremendous growing experience developing and improving our ELISA, our project, our ELISA kind of the technical processes. And then you can even say, my process worked so well that we used it for the training of new students coming in. You could really just put your enthusiasm and pride out there. Also, be prepared in advance. I always like to tell people, kind of look on LinkedIn for your interviewees, who's going to interview you, and kind of stalk them before you talk to them, and then make the connections for them. So let's see. Again, be prepared in advance. Just be aware that interviews can be set up differently. Sometimes they're one-on-one. Sometimes they'll pair up to save time. Sometimes it'll be a panel, and it could be just you and a panel of interviewers. But this industry standard is that there will be a phone screen initially by the hiring manager, and then once you pass the red flag, or once they identify that you don't have any red flags and you're not a psycho, they'll let you interview with the rest of the panel, right? Research the people, like I said, point out any connections that you might have seen on LinkedIn. They're usually flattered when you tell them that you researched their background. And then you can also keep asking them, like, what brought you to that company? What was your journey to this position like? And what's your journey so far? Again, research the organization. As I mentioned, you can go in the public space, into their company website or on LinkedIn. You can, know about their history, where they're headed. You can really just kind of really absorb their mission statement. And, if you're on board with it, that's a perfect win-win. But make sure that you know that you intentionally wanted to join their organization for a reason. Okay. So I'll breeze through this real quick since we don't have too much time left. So two most common questions that you'll get is, tell me about yourself. And it's actually kind of a bad question, but people ask it all the time anyway. But they'll ask you, tell me about yourself. And it's either because they haven't had time to read your resume, or because they want to know more about how you present that story. And, if there's anything more other than what they've read on paper, right? So again, don't just like statically list things. Bring that story to life and tell them about your journey and your accomplishments through it, and how your story ends with where you are now, sitting on the interview table with them. And this is why I got to this point where I really wanted to improve patient lives, and I wanted to join a cause and an organization that's focused on that. And then you end with why you fit to their organization. Similar thing. Why us? And you want to really tell them you researched the organization, your values fit with their values, and your vision fits with where they're going in the future. There's going to be technical behavioral questions, that you can leverage your experience. Behavioral questions also, you can leverage your experience. Those are more like soft skill questions. Wildcard questions, sometimes you might get it more from senior level because they don't tend to get into the weeds of technical questions. You might get asked, like, how do you read Seeking Alpha? You might shoot the breeze with them, and they're trying to just gauge your fit and your personality, right? So questions from your end, make sure you ask intelligent questions. I've seen a couple candidates, a handful of candidates come through where they don't ask questions. That doesn't leave a good impression. You have to kind of prepare these questions in advance, and the more focused you can get about the company, the better. But if you run out of stuff to talk about, you can always do space fillers like, oh, can you tell me about your journey here and your experience at this position so far? What does the team look like? How is it structured? Where is the team going? Is it growing? Why is this position open? Is it a backfill? Did somebody, or what are some of the key attributes that you think someone in this position should have to succeed in this role? Things like that. And there's a ton of resources out there, so you can kind of Google, interview questions and prepare in advance. I'll let you visit this slide later, but it's just general tips about do's and don'ts. Interviewing, after the interview, make sure you follow up. That definitely drives home your commitment. I've had a lot of people, most of the people don't follow up actually, but when I do get a follow-up email, I do remember that candidate, even if I'm not hiring them directly. So that does help with kind of your recommendation. When I go to the hiring manager and tell them, I thought the interview went well, they even followed up after. And so we all talk to each other. So this is really important for you to follow up after the interview. You can usually get the contact information from the person who set up the interview, like talent acquisition. Okay. 4 things you can negotiate on the table as a general rule. Once you get the offer, you can push back on the salary first. When we research your market value, I think you can go on Indeed.com and like based on your location and your job title and your level of experience, you can definitely get a lot of information in terms of what range you should be in terms of the salary offered. Sign-on cash bonus. This may or may not happen. A lot of times, it really depends on your field of study, depends on the company size, depends on your experience too. So if you're really, really inexperienced and you're fresh out of college, sign-on cash bonus may not happen, although they will have long-term incentives as well sometimes. So you can push back on the sign-on bonus or salary a little bit. Stocks, again, usually offered as you gain more experience and not initially at the entry level, but they may offer it to you depending on the size of the company. Like the smaller companies tend to give you more stocks than a sign-on bonus and things like that. Sealing the deal, you want to push back once to kind of push on like the salary or the sign-on bonus or the stocks. But if your interview and your resume is kind of where the beginning of that relationship with your hiring manager starts. So if you push back more than once and get a little bit too, difficult, then it can leave a sour note. And you can, your first day isn't your first day. It's really the beginning of your resume and the first time you talk with your hiring manager. So just remember that this is part of the relationship building. So let's see. Okay, so I see a question. Is it appropriate to ask the interview if there are other positions in the company that might suit you? That's an excellent question because I did actually personally run into that situation, and I was too afraid to speak up and be seen as kind of wishy-washy. So I just stuck to my guns and said, no, I really want this chemistry bench position when I really wanted the cell bio position. And looking back, had I been honest with myself and told them, I think I'd be a better fit here, it would have, avoided a lot of, just trouble in the end, right? So I think it's absolutely fine to speak up about your preferences and where you want to go, because everybody wants to have a smooth, working relationship. Nobody wants to, force you to be in a position where you'd rather be in another, right? So yeah, I think being honest is totally fine. So then let's see, we're at this module 3, at the end of module 3 now. So we're at the top of the hour and we're at the end of our coaching sessions, which is where I move on to the raffles for Quad for Dr. Ofori to give out the raffle.